Unitarian Universalist. My name is Mary Kerwin, and I'm here to help lead worship as your co-celebrant this morning with Lori King Nelson. Lori has prepared a service centered around the theme of liberating love, and we are always happy to welcome Lori to our pulpit as a frequent guest speaker. Welcome, Lori. Our Sunday service is a shared time of worship for all present as we gather for music, spoken words, and a time of reflection and inspiration as a religious community. Let us come together in a spirit of compassion and respect for ourselves and others attending this service. We especially welcome those who are visiting today. If you haven't yet done so, please sign in at the visitors table by the front door where you can be placed on our mailing list to receive our weekly emails and the monthly newsletter. Now, before we continue on to worship, there are a couple of announcements. First, Dan Sexton wants everybody to know that the church will be open this week during the extreme winter weather. And if members need a place to come in and warm up or even a place to come and stay, please contact Dan Sexton. I don't think he's in here right now, but he is our board president. And Dan can give you more information about coming to the church to stay warm. And our second announcement is we'd like for you to mark your calendar for our next Spectrum Chamber Music Society concert here at our All People's Church. It will take place on Monday, February 12th, so about a month away. The concert will include a performance by the Van Cliburn award-winning pianist, whose name is John Lee. There's a flyer on the bulletin board. And it is sure to be a highlight of our Spectrum season, February 12th. And now, please settle comfortably for our musical prelude.
A human of many talents you are. Yeah, for sure. On this frosty morning that brought so many more than I expected out of their homes and into this building, will you be with me as we call ourselves to worship? Focus our actions on those forced to the edges. Let us demonstrate the depth of the universal love we have for each person, whether friendless, homeless, or stateless. Let us lift up those whose lives are disrupted by oppression and liberate them with our love.
appropriate for the chalice lighting, our opening hymn, and spoken affirmation. Our chalice lighting words come to us from Maureen Killeran. In these hard times, let us look first to the response of love. In the midst of challenge, may our chalice flame bear witness to the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. In the midst of uncertainty, may our chalice be a beacon of encouragement, that our values may guide our choices. Let us look first to the response of love. And now please join in singing our opening hymn, number 131, Love Will Guide Us. Our spoken affirmation is, love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve others in community to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. Well, I think it's mostly the young at heart are now invited to come forward, if you wish, for our time for all ages here at the front of the chancel.
Sit with you. I will sit with all of you in heart, in spirit. So let me scoot over here. So this past week, my son Dimitri and I made a trip out to West Texas to our land. And our land is right on the border with Mexico. And we purchased this land for the sole purpose of welcoming people who have made it across the border to find some form of safe space, to rest a moment, to find food and water and a little shelter. And so I brought back some dirt, and I wanted to say that when I saw you doing the thing with the sand and talking about the layers of oppression that we see in every place we go, and how hard it is to remove those layers and start fresh, I wanted to remind myself always of the layers of oppression that were on this property and what can be in the future. So I can't remove what happened previously, but I can start fresh with this and think about every day the people who are going to be traveling across that property and finding love and care instead of hurt and oppression. So I want to thank you for always teaching that to the young people and those of us who are not so young. And I want y'all to know that we are not the only people who have property out there that feel this way. So anytime we get discouraged, remember there are a lot of people at the border that are really working towards making this hopeful ground for all of our neighbors. So thank you.
I'm wondering if you will give a little bit of this dirt that we can put out next to the vase, which has the story from last.
Oh, absolutely.
Of the dirt. We don't need the whole thing.
Okay.
But if I take
Yeah.
put a cup out so that people can.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
This year, the second Sunday will be our Light on Social Justice. And today is the second Sunday, and we are pleased to have in our house Umair Khan of the Metroplex Atheists, who was here earlier for our adult religious education. And we've invited Umair to speak to the congregation a little bit about the work of his organization. Umair, yes. You can, you're.
Yeah, I am the president of Metroplex Atheists. We're a community much like this to provide a safe space for people to feel comfortable speaking, which for a lot of atheists, they may feel that they have to filter themselves. So it's always a great place to just be able to be yourself. And I think with what I've been hearing about light on social justice, I would say that, it may feel like it's hard right now, that you see a lot of the hardships in the world, but as someone says, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So I think this is a great time to really be hopeful that there are a lot of people that are standing up, speaking, protesting, voices are coming forward to stand for social justice. And it is coming together with communities and solidarity that I think we're starting to make a change. It seems slow, but it is moving forward. So I hope that helps. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
We give to remind ourselves how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and sacred space. We give with the faith that together we have enough. Each Sunday, we take half of the non-dedicated offering that is received and share it with a local group whose values and goals reflect our own. This quarter, we are supporting the Native Prairies Association of Texas, which is a nonprofit land trust dedicated to the conservation, restoration, and appreciation of native prairies, savannas, and other grasslands in Texas. This offering, which we take every Sunday, is an opportunity to dedicate ourselves to the journey we are making together with the vision of a world made whole. The Native Prairies Association of Texas fits right into this vision and will be our Share the Plate partner through the end of March. The gifts of the congregation will be most gratefully received. Will the ushers please come forward? At this time in our service, we pause to give time and attention to the things in our community that are important to us. We gather here for healing and for peace in our hearts, and to acknowledge the shared stories and the news from the congregation. Each week, there's a journal outside the entrance to the sanctuary where you can write a message of memory or hope before the service. We honor these messages by lighting 3 candles here next to our chalice. Also, at any time during our service, you are welcome to come forward and light a candle in our meditation center that is here at the side of the chancel. Today, from our Book of Memory and Hope, we include this afternoon, directly after the service, there will be another religious exploration table talk in Jagger's Parlor. Join our DRE, Sarah Beryl Harrop, as we discern together what religious education at All Peoples looks like. A light lunch is provided. And I'd like to mention that I know that there's a lot of illness in many of my personal circles, including our pianist, Misha, who hasn't been feeling good this week. And again, we're very grateful for Colleen and her willingness and ability to come and fill in for Misha. If you were at our service last week, you learned that during January, we're welcoming the Guest at Your Table program, which is the international social justice program of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. One of the beneficiaries of Guest at Your Table is the Foundation for Justice and the Democratic Rule of Law, which was founded in 2011 to uphold the rule of law in Mexico by ensuring access to justice and due process for particularly vulnerable people. Today, we have a short video that shows their work.
The Foundation for Justice and the Democratic Rule of Law, Fundación para la Justicia y el Estado Democrático de Derecho, FJED, was founded in 2011, envisioned to defend, promote, and strengthen access to justice and the due process of law for particularly vulnerable groups, and thus consolidate the rule of law in Mexico. To achieve that, FJED focuses on serious human rights violations, migration and migration policy, violence against women, and justice and public policies to strengthen the rule of law. FJED's successes include establishing a regional network of civil society organizations to track the forced disappearance of migrants, providing material support and psychosocial aid to families of disappeared migrants in Mexico and Central America, accompanying the implementation of the Forensic Commission through the Mexican Attorney General's Office, and participating in hearings and submitting recommendations to international and regional human rights mechanisms. UUSC is supporting the organization's project to strengthen advocacy to bolster the Mexican Foreign Support Mechanism, uplift relatives of migrants working for access to Mexican justice, consolidate the work of the Forensic Commission, and continue strategic litigation.
Let us now open our minds and hearts to the place of quiet, to the silent prayer for the healing of pain and the soft, gentle coming of love. Whether the coming days bring us joy or sorrow, may the deep peace and love of this community sustain us. We pause at this time to hold and honor the very personal joys and the sorrows of the congregation. Please join us now for a few moments of silent reflection and meditation, followed by a brief musical interlude.
I want to thank everyone who has participated in creating this service this morning, from the music to the sound and tech board, to Mary for co-celebrating. Usually on Sundays like this, it's real thin. But look at you, you showed up. I also want to thank you, Mr. Kahn, for coming out in this weather and speaking with us about your mission. And we do hope that we can be a good, solid partner with you. Thank you. Our reading this morning comes from Bell Hooks, an excerpt from Love as the Practice of Freedom. Without an ethic of love shaping the direction of our political vision and our radical aspirations, we are often seduced, in one way or the other, into continued allegiance to systems of domination, imperialism, sexism, racism, classism. It has always puzzled me that women and men who spend a lifetime working to resist and oppose one form of domination can be systematically supporting another. I have been puzzled by powerful visionary black male leaders who can speak and act passionately in resistance to racial domination and accept and embrace sexist domination of women. By feminist white women who work daily to eradicate sexism, but who have major blind spots when it comes to acknowledging and resisting racism and white supremacist domination of the planet. Critically examining these blind spots, I conclude that many of us are motivated to move against domination solely when we feel our self-interest directly threatened. Often, then, the longing is not for a collective transformation of society, an end to politics of dominations, but rather simply for an end to what we feel is hurting us. This is why we desperately need an ethic of love to intervene in our self-centered longing for change. Fundamentally, if we are only committed to an improvement in that politic of domination that we feel leads directly to our individual exploitation or oppression, we not only remain attached to the status quo, but act in complicity with it, nurturing and maintaining those very systems of domination. Until we are all able to accept the interlocking, interdependent nature of systems of domination and recognize specific ways each system is maintained, we will continue to act in ways that undermine our individual quest for freedom and collective liberation struggle. Driving out of Big Bend last week, Dimitri and I were stopped at a border patrol checkpoint. I could see several armed men checking each vehicle coming through on the little 2-lane road. They were all business while searching the cars and asking questions. I watched the agents performing their duties, noticing that the officers standing off to the side were paying close attention to the occupants of the vehicles waiting in line. I wondered if they were intentionally intimidating, or if that was just the face of people tasked with a terrible job with terrible pay. And by the way, the average pay is $36,000 to $42,000 per year for sitting out in the middle of nowhere 10 plus hours a day. The turnover rate is twice the average of all other professions. As I sat waiting for our turn, I wondered how many considered themselves Christian. How many believe that all people are created equal? I wondered if they ever thought of themselves as the oppressors. How many are white supremacists? How many chose that line of work because they believe that what they are doing is right? And what were the influences that impacted those beliefs? Our wait was only a few minutes. I rolled down my window, and as the agent leaned into the car, I could see a cross tattooed on the skin between his thumb and his forefinger. He asked me to roll down the other windows. They looked into the back seat, seemed satisfied, and asked where we were headed, and Dimitri responded enthusiastically, to Bennigan's in Monahan's for a Monte Cristo. The agent's expression never changed. I wondered how long it would take for them to apprehend the man we had seen trying to hide on the side of the road about 2 miles back. I thought about what his journey must have been like, and I prayed they wouldn't see him. We saw plenty of evidence of people just like him passing through our land in West Texas. We're only a few miles from the border, and I imagine most landowners out that way find the same things we did. Human migration. It's a story as old as time. Collapsing particle board structures, the remains of campfires. All of this reinforcing our mission there to provide shelter, food, comfort, and safety along their long and dangerous journey to the kind of life we enjoy every day. Now, appearing on the Dana Show last week, Greg Abbott stated, "We are using every tool that can be used, from building a border wall to building these border barriers, to passing this law that I signed that led to another lawsuit by the Biden administration where I signed a law making it illegal for somebody to enter Texas from another country. The only thing that we're not doing is we're not shooting people who come across the border because, of course, the Biden administration would charge us with murder." Here we are, having to once again say that murdering people is unacceptable. When I consider the rise in hate crimes, the blatant white supremacy speech, the calls to violence against our neighbors, and that's not just our southern neighbors, but even those within our own country, it becomes so clear what factors are influencing this behavior. Did you ever watch the film When a Stranger Calls? Jill Johnson has just put the children she's babysitting to bed, and as she settles in to await the parents' return, she receives an ominous phone call from an unidentified man who asks if she has checked on the children. Alarmed, Jill calls the police, who instruct her to keep the caller on the line so they can trace the call. The man calls back, and the call is traced. The police contact her immediately with a terrifying message. "Jill, this is Sergeant Sacker. Listen to me. We've traced the call. It's coming from inside the house." Well, we live in Texas. The call is definitely coming from inside the house. What happens to us when we are constantly fed a diet of nativism, white Christian nationalism, blatant racism, xenophobia? How about the fear that accompanies the replacement theory and drives some people to an irrational hatred of an entire race or culture? What happens is that our individual relationships become separated from our universal relationships. Were you raised to believe that we are to love one another? I was. Were you raised to treat others the way you want to be treated? I was. Do I always do that? No. Because there's this alternative message that hums alongside that one, saying some of us are better than others, and it has been disconnecting us from the true meaning of love since the day we were born. A lifetime of conditioning is really hard to break free from. Recently, in a public restroom here in Fort Worth, a woman was complaining about the lack of paper toilet seat covers. She went on to say that this would never happen in California. They are in every restroom there, she said. She continued telling me she was forced to move to Texas because of the politics. Then she asked if I knew how bad the homeless situation was in California, stating that she didn't have anything against homeless people, but she was against people who enable them. We wouldn't have any homeless people if we would just make them all get jobs, she said as she dried her hands and straightened the ornate crucifix hanging from a gold chain around her neck. Give them the jobs the illegals are taking, she said as a parting gift. Well, thank goodness California has paper toilet seat covers. It just seems so easy for us to separate our individual relationships from our universal ones, doesn't it? Especially when we don't recognize that we're doing it. How many of us here have heard someone say that they have queer friends, Latinx friends, unemployed friends, friends on disability or public assistance? I love everyone equally, they say, and then vote against the interest of those very people. That's what it means to be disconnected from the true meaning of love, when we're not working together to create freedom for everyone. Freedom from oppression, freedom from poverty, freedom from hatred, bigotry, racism. Freedom from all the things that keep us from living our very best life. What kind of love can we make when we take the standards we demand to live by and make that the bar by which we treat everyone else? That kind of love is a universal call to care about all individuals and their right to the same freedom from oppression we expect for ourselves. If you love your transgender cousin or grandchild, really love them, then you will refuse to vote for those who persecute and oppress them. If you love your Spanish-speaking neighbor, you won't ask if they're documented. You'll speak up to defend them when you hear hate speech. That is transforming the care of an individual relationship into one that impacts universal relationships. It really is that simple. Doing for others what you would want done for you. That's the love we should be making in this world, isn't it? If you've never visited the Racism Index website, I encourage you to do so. It is an interactive map that shares real-time data from each of the 50 states. If you go to the PRRI graphic on the relationship between Christian identity / church attendance and predicted probability for extreme racism, I think we can all see how disconnected many of us are from the idea of a love that liberates others from oppression and the kind of love that tends to be practiced in a more Christianized society. While there's a strong relationship between racist attitudes and Christian identity, there is really no significant relationship between unaffiliated identity and racist attitudes. It took me a lot of years to see that connection. And that was the reason I moved further and further from my own Christian identity. The call was coming from inside the house. I've said before that the majority of ministers are much more progressive than the congregations they serve. And they spend so much energy trying to change that without much success. The ones making a real difference are most often the congregations like Galileo that were created for the purpose of universal love. Now, this borders on Christian bashing, I know. The hard truth is that if a faith system is going to follow a person who told them to love one another and care for the less fortunate and all of the other things that Jesus said to do, then they need to understand universal love and how we are meant to cry out when we see and experience the injustices and sorrows of the world. Love liberates. It doesn't bind. In the words of Maya Angelou, when you truly love someone, your love sets them free. It gives them permission to be, to do, and to create all the wonderful things they came here to create. I believe that this is what this congregation does best. You truly love, even with all the differences in faith and belief and practice. Each one of you stands in universal love with your neighbor, whatever their background or journey. That's no easy feat. It's remarkable, really. This world you are creating out of a desire to see all things loved and free. You reach out to the larger world with a vision of what it can be, and you open your hearts and scatter love so abundantly. Love truly is the doctrine of this church. I'd like to close with a poem, For One Who Suffers, by Howard Thurman. I know I cannot enter all you feel, nor bear with you the burden of your pain. I can but offer what my love does give, the strength of caring, the warmth of one who seeks to understand. This I do in quiet ways, that on your lonely path you may not walk alone. Will you join me in the closing hymn, number 121, We'll Build a Land?
May this flame that has brightened our time together warm our hearts, light our paths, and inspire our vision as we once again go our separate ways.
May we take with us the love we find here, passing it like the chalice flame, sharing it until we have touched every living thing with the loving peace of freedom. The service is ended, and we ask that you stay and join us for coffee and conversation in the library.